everybody for being here. I am going to now call the Thursday, January 6, 2022 Executive Committee to order. The record will reflect that we are convened as of 12:02 p.m. Standard Time. I would respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. I'll now call the roll. Vince Busick is here. First Vice Chair Geisinger.
Here.
Groovy. Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Treasurer Whitmore.
Here.
Secretary Sloan.
Here.
Great. We've got 5 members present, no members absent. We have a quorum. I also want to recognize other directors that are here. Eric Davidson, Angie Rivera Malpiedi, and I think that's everybody, all the other directors. We have, of course, have GMs E.O. Johnson and General Counsel Snyder, and all of our board staff assembled too. So thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to state for the record for a reminder to everyone and everybody that may be listening that the Transit Security Administration, the TSA, has extended the federal mask requirement for public transportation until March 18, 2022. The federal mask requirement states that individuals must wear a face covering while waiting for and while riding public transportation, to include airports and aircraft, train stations and trains, bus stops and buses. Everybody out there, wear a mask, please, when you're riding RTD. The first order of business for today are the standing committee appointments. And I'm going to start a little off script because I had some questions about this new process of the executive committee recommending the makeup and the board ratifying. And I've asked General Counsel Snyder to tell us the mechanics of that and how that works.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Melanie Snyder, General Counsel. So when the board adopted the amendments to the bylaws last year, that effectuated a repeal of the prior standing committees as well as the committee of the whole structure. So we now have this executive committee and 3 new standing committees, the first of which will meet next week. So today, this committee is going to appoint the members of those 3 standing committees for ratification by the full board on January 25th. And as far as the process today, I know there are a number of discussion items to address first, but when you're ready, Mr. Chair, to move to the recommended action portion of the agenda, you will need to take formal action today as the executive committee. So what I'd recommend is you kind of take each committee one by one, starting likely with the operations and safety committee that'll be meeting next week. And I recommend you just either make or entertain a motion and just go one by one. So the motion, for example, would be, I move that directors A, B, and C be appointed to the Operations and Safety Committee. And then you would entertain a second and a discussion and just move through each of the 3. Then board staff can update the recommended action that'll ultimately be approved in the board report going to the full board.
Right. So my question had to do with the ratification process at the board. My understanding is these appointments, as they come out of here today, those are the committees that will meet, for example, next week when operations meets. Those are the people that meet prior to ratification. So can you explain how that works and what ratification means? And is it a possibility that they don't get ratified?
Well, you're correct. Yes, that the committee appointments today will be effective today, and those new committee, the first committee that meets next week, will be made up of the composition of who's appointed today. The board will officially ratify on the 25th, and so that will be the formal ratification. And certainly there's not going to be any official full board action by the committees. Those are all always going to have to be. Formal action will always be taken by the board as a whole. Ratification really does envision it's a bit ceremonial in the sense that really the board should be officially approving the committee appointments that are made by this executive committee.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. It's very helpful. So
you're welcome.
A couple of things. Everybody was asked, all of our board members were asked to contact the board office and let them know what their preferences were with regard to the standing committees and also with regard to the external appointments that the chair makes. So we have a spreadsheet that was assembled by the board staff, and there were a couple of corrections because a couple of people, where's Eric Davidson? A couple of people, kind of didn't. So there were a couple of corrections that we had to do along the way. We did that just to make sure we were honoring the requests of the board members. So we put together, and when I say we, I said I started out putting together a list of what those committees would look like with 5 members and what they would look like with 7 members. And Ms. McManus, are you able to share the screen of the compositions that shows the 5 and 7 member makeup of committees?
Yes, Ty Shrey will be sharing that.
Thanks. And while they're pulling that up, I'll just say that what we had to do with some of the 7 member committees was put people in committees that didn't seem like they were really thrilled to be on. That wasn't any of their second or maybe their third choices. So the first thing we're going to address today is whether we have committees of 5 members and of 7 members. And my understanding is we can have committees that some have 7 and some have 5. We don't have to have across the board 5-member committees or across the board 7-member committees. And Ms. Snyder, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thanks. So First Vice Chair Geisinger and I kind of went through this, and we went through the spreadsheet of what directors' preferences were. And we found that if you look at it kind of organically, the way it fell out was that finance had 7 board members that were interested. Operations and safety had 5 members that were very interested. And the performance committee had 5 members that is either their first or second choices. So that's kind of how the 7 versus 5 member committees worked out. And if we have that spreadsheet that shows that breakout, maybe we could show that. Now, unless anybody has any questions on this one. Does anybody have any questions on this? I'll entertain questions. Okay, I don't see any questions on that. So if you could share the screen next of that breakout that kind of was organically broken out of 7 in finance and 5 for operations and safety and performance. And you can see the people that compose this, the makeup of these committees. And like I said before, it fell out this way organically, and it was also a way that we were able to honor people's requests. What happens here is that there are 3 people based on their expressed interest that are on 2 committees. One of them is Director Deschel, one is Director Lewis, and one is Director Catlin. And everybody else got their first choices to be on the committees they're on. I think this is an easier way to go. We're not putting people on committees that they, don't really have the interest or maybe the time to be involved in. So I'm going to open it up now to discussion among executive committees, see what you all think.
Vince, so on the 3 individuals that are on 2 committees, I'm assuming that all 3 of them did get their first choice committee,
Yeah.
which is pivotal. So perhaps the only fly in the ointment is if we have one of those individuals that just can't fulfill 2 committees, and if that's the case, I guess we might have some troubles with the numbers, Melanie, if I'm making the right deduction here. But obviously we could move people around if that's the case. But otherwise, I think it's a grand plan and gets people where they want to be by and large.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Well, more than by and large. First choices, everybody's on those. So that's, I think that gets us a good start with the energy flow being the right direction. So good work on that, Vince and Lynn and staff.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess to that point, if in fact any of those directors on 2 committees come back and say, this is way too much for me, yeah, we can definitely tweak that as we come out of here. Director Geisinger, First Vice Chair Geisinger.
Just basically what you said is a very good point. I think we've talked with Director Catlin. He's here. She can speak for herself. Maybe we need to call Directors Deschel and Lewis, later today and just double check. But I do think it seems like we got most people what they were looking for, I think.
Great, thanks, First Vice Chair. Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this one does look good with the 2 committees of 5 and 1 committee of 7. So I think we should go with that. And my question was really, I know Lynn had called me asking, are you sure you want to be on two with some of the other obligations? And I said, well, I do have the time. Unlike, I have quite a bit of flexibility, but I was just curious if you did talk to Directors Deschel and Lewis, since they both have full-time jobs. So I was just curious if you had double checked with them.
Yeah, we were doing this at the 11th hour, so we definitely need to do that. I'm hopeful they'll be able to do it because the committees that they're on, I think it's really important for them to be on. I'd love to have them on those committees, but we will definitely do that.
Okay, so they haven't been consulted, but
yeah, we haven't had the time. We were working on this till 10 minutes ago.
I know, and I really appreciate this hard work. It actually sorted out rather nicely, in my opinion.
We agree.
It's magical, and thank you for serving on 2, Peggy.
Well, I don't know if that's magical, but you're welcome.
It is.
Okay, so it seems like we've got consensus on 5 versus 7, and in this case, doing 7 for finance, 5 for operations and safety, and 5 for performance. Is that accurate? Anybody object to that on the executive committee? No? Good. The next thing we're going to talk about are meeting protocols. So we should discuss what kind of meeting protocols we want to establish. For example, we've got committees that are not of the whole, right? So every other director can attend, even if they're not appointed to the committee. So the question then becomes, can they participate and speak during the meetings, or should they just be required to observe? Let's take that one first. What do people think about that? Anybody have any comments? Treasurer, Secretary Sloan, sorry.
I believe participation should be encouraged at the committee level so that you get a broader group of opinions rather than just 5 or 7 people. Some people will be more concerned about some issues than others and would be motivated to speak up.
Thanks. I tend to agree. I think more input is always better than less. Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Thank you. I agree with Secretary Sloan. I think that they should be able to participate, and I hesitate to say this, but not dominate. I think that people who are not on the committee may not attend every meeting, but may choose to because of particular subject, which I think is good. But I just want to make sure that the work of the committee is done by the committee members and that we get comment from other board members, but that I just don't want us to get sidetracked. Does that make sense?
Sure. And the chair and the vice chair of those committees will be responsible for ensuring how they run. So they'll manage that stuff. So yeah, good. First Vice Chair Geisinger, Secretary Whitmore, do you guys agree?
I agree. Yep.
I'm fine with it, Vince. Thank you.
Okay. And of course, they won't be able to vote. If you're not on the committee, you don't vote, right? Okay. Any other protocols we think we need to have for these meetings? I think we've set days and times and things like that. So anything else you think we need to discuss here? No? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll just speak
Secretary
up.
Sloan.
I would just note that we've agreed to have public comment at each of these meetings.
Right. Yeah. I think that's part of the overarching change to the bylaws. So yeah, and it's a good thing to bring up again for anybody listening that public comment will be taken and encouraged at each of the meetings. So good point. All right, anything else on protocol? Great, we're going to move on to internal and external appointments. So we talked about the internal, we're going to identify, did we pull that up yet? Yeah, we did. Never mind. So we talked about those and how we came to that, how it was, giving, honoring everybody's first choices that we could, and even some people's second choices. So in terms of there are some, yeah, okay. I think we talked about that. So with regard to external appointments, so this is the chair's prerogative, right? So I made external appointments and I tried to give people their preferences on first and second choices. Sometimes it was hard because, if you've got one person to appoint as the primary on something and 5 people want to be on it, you got to kind of figure out what's what. So I've made those choices. They'll be coming out. I tried to honor everybody's preferences. Most importantly, I think on the ad hoc audit committee, my decision is that Second Vice Chair Catlin and Director Davidson will continue to serve on that, because it just seemed to me that because you two have done the grunt work, you've really gotten into this and dug in deep and have all that institutional knowledge on what's going on. And I think the rest of the board respects you and the work that you do and will continue to do so. So that's why I did that. Second Vice Chair Catlin, you have a comment or question?
The chart that I have does not show Director Davidson on there.
Yeah, I sent an email to Taishrei on that. So it will. So I know it doesn't, but it will.
So my question is, are we limited to 2?
My understanding, and General Counsel Snyder, my understanding is that an ad hoc committee can be 3 people. Is that correct? Otherwise, you need board approval and public notice and all that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's not a limitation on the number of people that can serve on an ad hoc committee. It is an advisory committee to the board. And so I do recommend that the ad hoc committees, just like the redistricting committee, for example, still follow open meetings protocols, which means that you notice the meetings and that the public is able to participate. Be at the meeting and be able to watch the meeting, not necessarily participate.
So to that point, if I might, I have heard from a couple other board members who have expressed interest. And if it's going to be noticed and the public can participate even with only 2, I believe that we might want to open it up to a couple of other board members, especially if they have expressed interest and would like to take on some of those activities. So that's just a thought I have. Because if, as General Counsel Snyder says, if we open it up to the public, then it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 5 board members who are on the ad hoc committee.
So my question would be, Peggy, when you and Eric had your meetings, were they all noticed? Or maybe somebody else can answer that question.
Well, the meetings that we had, there were more kind of managerial meetings where we were supposed to meet with Anne Marie. Those were rather sporadic. And then occasionally General Manager CEO Johnson would attend those as well. But the other meetings that we had with just a few of the meetings that we had for the process, and I can defer to General Manager Deborah Johnson, when we had, for example, the consultant on board and those, I don't believe those were noticed. Were they, Barbara?
No.
Okay.
Okay, GM Johnson, if you want to.
Yes, just for clarification's sake, I think would be helpful. So once again, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO, to the point that was raised, these meetings were of the nature of working with the chair and the vice chair of the Finance Administration and Audit Committee. It's no different from the other preparatory meetings that are had with other board members, the chair of the Operations and Safety Committee or the Planning and Construction Capital Programs Committee. So that was the nature of those meetings, to provide preparation processes as related to delivering information to the public and getting board materials ready, specifically in relationship to the work that spawned from the independent reviews from the OSA, as well as the after peer review. It was basically ensuring that there was alignment around the responses and the path forward with the recommendation. So that is the qualifying distinction between how those meetings came to fruition. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity to address.
Thanks, and that's a big distinction, because it wasn't an ad hoc committee meeting. It was just the chair and the vice chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. So the third person that has expressed interest is Director Deschel. If ad hoc committee meetings are routinely noticed anyway, I would be more than happy to also add Director Deschel, the only other person who listed an interest in being on the ad hoc committee. What does anybody think about that? Not that everybody up, thumbs up. Cool. All right. So Ms. McManus, if you could note that the ad hoc committee, audit committee, will consist of directors Catlin, Davidson, and Deschel.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I do really appreciate that, because I had a long conversation with Director Deschel last night, and he is very, very supportive of the work that we have done and some directors didn't completely understand that by his remarks. And he is really, I think, anxious to help out. So I appreciate his perspective and his talents.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for talking to him, and thanks for bringing it up. And I apologize. That's my misunderstanding. I was under the assumption that an ad hoc committee, for whatever reason, could only be 2 people, because that's all it's ever been. But now, knowing what I know, that's great. I'm going to appoint lots of ad hoc committees with tons of people. No, thanks. That's great. Good information. Anything else anybody wants to? Oh, I'm sorry. First Vice Chair Geisinger, please.
Just that puts Bobby on 3 committees like Director Catlin. So we do want to be sure to call him today and make sure he's up for that. I can't hear
You're
you.
on mute. You're on mute.
Okay, I will call Director Deschel and Director Lewis after this meeting to confirm they're okay with all that. Okay. So that covers internal, external appointments. Next is our recommended action is for the Board of Directors to ratify the 2022 Standing Committee appointments. The full board must ratify the Standing Committee appointments. The board office staff will correct the board report with the assignments, but to recap, the following directors have been appointed. So my motion is going to be to appoint the following directors. Well, the motion I'm looking for is to appoint the following directors to the Finance Committee. That would be directors Catlin, Cook, Davidson, Geisinger, Whitmore, Broom, and Deschel. Do I have a motion to appoint those directors to the Finance Committee, Standing Committee?
So moved. And I would say that's a powerhouse committee.
Did you second? Dr.
I
Geisinger?
second it. Yeah.
And Geisinger, okay. Any further discussion on this committee? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody opposed? That carries 5-0. Next, we're going to seek a motion to appoint the following members to the Operations and Safety Committee. They are Williams, Tisdale, Rosenthal, Bouquet, and Lewis. Do I have a motion for those appointments?
So moved.
And I
Whitmore.
second, and I would say that's also a terrific committee. I don't
Yeah.
fill out committee.
Any further discussion on those appointments to the Operations and Safety Committee? All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? 5-0. And for the Performance Standing Committee, I need a motion to appoint the following members to the Performance Standing Committee: Directors Lewis, Deschel, Sloan, Catlin, and Buzick. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Geisinger and Whitmore. And any discussion? All in favor, say
Another
aye.
great committee.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? Yeah, and Director Sloan, everybody said that. Yeah, the way this fell out organically, I think it worked out well. And I hope they all think so as well. Anyway, okay, so Ms. Snyder, does that satisfy the requirements of the appointments?
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks so much. Okay. So now that they're appointed and they're going to be so constituted, the committees with these people on them, I understand that there is some discussion about a finance committee meeting or not having a finance committee meeting next Tuesday, and that it was the preference, I believe, of our GM and some staff to not have a finance committee meeting. I'd like to open this up to discussion to members of the executive committee, because I guess some of the thinking is that maybe there should be the meeting to have that committee select their chair and vice chair so they can begin their work and setting agendas and things like that. But let's open it up to discussion. Second Vice Chair Catlin.
Yeah, I understood that the reason that it was recommended that we not hold the meeting is because they didn't have a lot of material to present. But I do think it would be appropriate to select, do our business and select chair and vice chair of the committee so that those people can prepare for the following meeting. That's just my thought.
Muted, Vince.
Director Geisinger.
Just the same. It seems like if we can just at least get a chair and vice chair elected so that they can be working with Doug and whoever else. So we're hitting the ground running in February, that makes sense.
Okay, any feedback from our GM or staff on that? Is that manageable?
Mr. Chair, if I may, yes, it is manageable. And then also assumptions are made about who would be staffing the committee, but since they're joined, it's contingent upon the subject matter. So I wanted to clarify that first, Chair, where it was qualified that it would be the CFO. There could be different individuals. So we will be working on that once we have a clear understanding who's the chair and vice chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So let's go ahead and have that meeting next Tuesday of the fund, if we can get that noticed and set up. And I guess the first action they'll take is selecting their chair and vice chair and get that thing going. So any other discussion on that from anybody? Okay, thanks. Let's talk about the board retreat. So one of the things that's come up just recently is the date.
I apologize, Mr.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the process for selecting chair and vice chair, who facilitates that?
General Counsel Snyder, can you help us with that?
Well, you won't have anyone there to facilitate it. I think, you could certainly have board staff open the meeting and take the roll call for the record. And then you would just entertain a motion. So anyone could just make a motion right off the bat would be just fine.
Okay, so, I
So
just,
free for all, but basically free for all.
well, I just wasn't sure if
No, I'm kidding, of course.
the chair of the board would facilitate that and say.
That was my thought. We could have Vince, do all of those too, since he's nothing else to do.
Yeah, thanks.
I just thought, just to get the ball rolling, it would be a one-time deal, but
Yeah, well, I could delegate too, couldn't I, Troy?
Yes, you could.
That's
and
good.
know
I mean,
you will.
either way, I'm happy to do that or have the committee itself just,
We could have one of the executive committee members do it, because I would assume that we would not be candidates to chair those committees. And maybe that's a bad assumption, but I wouldn't mind running that election for our chair and vice chair. I certainly won't be a candidate.
Well, if that's the case, then why don't you do that on Tuesday night?
So you didn't have to delegate.
Well, I was going to anyway, but thanks, Troy. No, that's good. Okay, so does that work, Ms. Snyder? Is that okay? You see any problems with that?
No, no problem with that. That would be just fine.
Okay, let's plan on that happening.
And we need
Thank
to
you.
select our person for the other committee, which is next week as well, to run that one, correct?
And that's operations and safety, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be there to do that. So why don't you put me down to get that ball rolling? Is anything? Yeah, we'll elect the chair and vice chair, and if they've got an agenda, then they can take it over after the election. Okay, let's do that. Okay. Anything else on these committees and the election of chairs and vice chair? GM Johnson, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Just wanted to state, recognizing the performance committee. We had discussed about the statistical validation of the community value survey, as well as the customer excellence survey. Plant Moran is currently undertaking that. So it's likely that we will have a performance committee in February to share that information. So I just wanted to state for the record that it would seem most likely that at that same meeting that the designation would be made for the chair and the vice chair as well. So just wanted to ensure that that was in the record. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I'd be happy to, again, start that off because I will not be seeking to be the chair of the performance committee. So as Director Whitmore is going to do with finance, I'll do that with performance as well. Great. Are we good to move on to the board retreat? Yeah, okay. So there was some late discussion about dates and considering the possibility of proposing new dates in the first 2 weeks, first 2 Saturdays, I guess, of March, and those weren't considered, I think, because Ms. McManus, I believe, was not going to be present, but Dr. Geisinger, why don't you take it?
I think Director Davidson very generously is moving his vacation plans to be there on March 26th. The only other person that's not there is Director Rivera Malpiedi, but I think she has a problem with a lot of the dates. Problem being that she'll be out of town and out of the country. So,
got it. Okay, well, great. And Director Davidson, thank you so much for that,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to
Very
have to
generous.
do that. Yeah, perfect. So did we have a date, don't we? It's March 26th. Has that been made public to the world?
I don't think so.
As now. Okay, so it appears that the date that the vast majority of directors can do would be Saturday, March 26th, 2022. And I understand it's going to be at the same, notice will come out, it's going to be at the same location we had the prior retreats over at the DCPA, whatever that room is. So, so that's good. So we want to talk about some of the topics that are going to be discussed. Some of the things that have been recommended are governance and board issues, the new meeting structure, communication, and how we can become a stronger voice in regional issues. Those are pretty broad topics, and I don't know that we want to drill down into most of them now or at the retreat, but I'll open it up to discussion among executive committee. Okay, first Vice Chair Geisinger, thank you.
I think we did a kind of a quick polling asking people to tell us kind of their 3 main topics, but I think that in the RFP, the vision is that the facilitator would do like they did before and call everybody up and kind of get some specifics there. The RFP, I think, provides for the facilitator to participate in a kind of a practice session. I don't think it mentions with the executive committee, but that seems to me like it would make a lot of sense, just to make sure they're on track and, we can answer questions in advance. Something along those lines, I think would help narrow it down. I'm happy to talk content more specifically if others want to, but I just wanted to add those pieces.
And GM Johnson, do you have some light to shed on that?
I just wanted to qualify, we're referencing it as a request for proposal. Actually, it's a scope of work. I want to be mindful of the terms we use for procurement practices. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks. And is that going to be part of the process? Will the facilitator contact the directors to get input from them ahead of the retreat? Does anybody know that?
Isn't that in there, Barbara?
Yes, that's generally in all of the retreat, the scope of work in all of the retreats.
Good. So maybe that's how we drill down is through that one-on-one stuff, but we can also, drill down more at the retreat. So,
Well,
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Lynn.
And I think, like I said, that it does provide, Barbara, doesn't it, for a sort of a pre-retreat session that I don't think it does say executive committee, but I think that makes a lot of sense to sort of help the facilitator pull it together and focus.
Yes, it can be done that way, just taking into consideration that it would again be a public meeting.
Rest of the executive committee, would that be something you'd like to see happen? Yes. Raise your hand. Yes. Yes. Maybe. Yes. Okay. 4 out of 5. Sorry, Marjorie. So, Lynn, if you could state that a little more succinctly, do you think that the board will have a special meeting with or is it just the one-on-one?
Well, I think we worked on this before the holidays, but Barbara did a nice job of starting off, and Deborah did some great edits. But I think that that's part of the scope of work, and that they would do these one-on-one conversations like they have in the past. And the only thought in terms of bringing it back to the executive committee is to sort of, this is a person who doesn't know us the way we know us. And to just sort of make sure that the way they're focusing the issues is what it seems like the board has in mind.
Okay, sounds good. So perhaps the one-on-ones can happen, and the executive committee meeting in March, maybe we'll have that done, and we can just add that to the agenda to talk about and have our facilitator present.
I think that would be great. I mean, it's just, the process of preparing a speaker or facilitator, you want to do the preparation in advance. And that's all that, we have in mind there, I think.
Okay. Anybody have any objection to that? No, good. Okay. So we've identified these 4 main topic areas. It sounds to me like what we're saying is the drilling down function will take place in the one-on-one sessions that eventually will be formalized by the facilitator and brought to the executive committee. And we can always kind of go off script at the retreat because that's what we do. Do we think we need to discuss that any further here today? And Director Geisinger, you still got your hand up? You want to talk?
I'm sorry, no.
No, okay. Does that sound okay? Anybody have any objection to that kind of a plan? Is that sufficiently clear, Ms. McManus, Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to tell you to do something, not tell you what it is.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just as a
yes.
point of clarification, recognizing the procurement process and what it entails for a solicitation, I would just ask you all to be mindful as well, contingent upon what does come out. If in fact you need staff preparation relative to preparing items that may aid in your discussions, that would be advantageous for us to know in advance of that as we go forward.
Right. I think what I envision is that the facilitator conducts these one-on-ones, and the facilitator puts together a spreadsheet or a summary of the items, categorizing them in however they want to, and then brings that to the executive committee. So hopefully not a lot of staff time if we can get the facilitator to do some of that work. Okay. Anything else about the board retreat? Do we need to talk about anything more? Does staff need any more clarification? Do any of the members of the executive committee want to weigh in on anything else right now? You don't see any hands, so I'm going to move on. So any other matters to come before the executive committee that we want to discuss? Okay, no other matters. I guess I just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks to this executive committee for being here. Congratulations to everybody that's, new and the returning people. That's great. I want to thank Jim, CEO Johnson, all your ongoing hard work. And I said some nice things to you to Nate Miner. So, and thanks to Barbara, your staff, everybody else, John McKay. Oh, I see Director Tisdale is here. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you earlier. Director Tisdale, thank you so much for being present. That said, I need, you bet, that said, I need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Director Catlin, second.
Second.
For Dr. Whitmore, and any opposed? No. Great. Thanks for everybody attending. The meeting is adjourned at 12:43 p.m. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Good work. Thank you.